Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Financial Counseling and our review for Exam 3. We'll cover everything that we had on the last exam, plus those new topics in surviving debt. You have all those slides in Blackboard along with this. I reduced the review because it was a bunch of slides that we weren't going to be able to cover all, and this is going to focus just on the surviving debt stuff. So the exam is comprehensive, but I'm going to focus more heavily on the more recent stuff. And for the financial counseling, chapters 1 through 9 refer to previous exam reviews for those. All right, so you have learned a lot, tons of topics. We know how to prioritize our debts, how credit works, credit cards, the different types. If we get kicked out of our housing situation, evictions and foreclosures, different choices to avoid, so like those payday loans, the pawn shops, title loans, things like that. How to budget, how to get more dollars and lose fewer dollars in our cash flows. With home ownership, we went into mortgages along with foreclosures we already talked about. Home ownership, we had our standard sort of 15 or 30 year mortgage with a fixed rate. Talked about how we could get better rates with improving our credit and some other stuff. New loans for old debt. Probably don't want to take on something that's secured to pay off something that's unsecured. Medical debt, we had our 501c3 hospitals that gave you low cost or no cost services if you were lower income, and ways that we could maybe negotiate or reduce the amount owed. Student loans, we looked at private and federal, and then the sort of three main ways that we had to repay federal student loans with the level, income-based, or what slowly goes up over time and graduating. Debt collectors, what they can and can't do. If your car is getting repossessed, what they have to do in different states and what your rights are there. What we can do with bankruptcy, the two different types, and then different types of taxes. We talked about property taxes, tax sales, and foreclosures. All right, so same setup as last time, 10 multiple choice, 10 short answer. And in investments, Abby suggested we skip ahead to the more recent stuff. Would you like me to do that here? Circle back if we get through it. All right. Medical debt? Further?
Yes, sir.
All right. So medical debt, hospitals are not in the business of collecting money. They're in the business of healing people. And if you do break your leg, have surgery, get an organ transplant, whatever you do, they're probably not going to come after you themselves. They'll send a few letters, and after a while, they will just sell it off to a debt collection agency. They're one of the nicer places because that's not their business. Communication will help. If you talk to the hospital, explain your situation, they may be able to give you that reduced rates. The 501c3 hospital had to. Medical debt is expensive. Medical debt is one of the most common reasons people are going to declare bankruptcy. Because if you declare bankruptcy, they're not going to come and break your leg that they fixed. To keep our costs low, we want to stay in network. With health insurance, you have in and out of network. If you're uninsured, well, everywhere is, I guess, out of network because you don't have that. With our insurance companies, they sometimes will have a fixed amount of this is what we cover for this particular procedure. You can appeal that if you think it's too low. If this is what the hospital charges, if this is what the caregiver, dentist, dermatologist, whatever charges for a procedure, your insurance company may say, well, we only cover $200 for that, and they're charging $250. So we'll pay $200 of it, and the other $50 is on you. You can can potentially appeal that amount. If they deny it completely, saying maybe it's not required or experimental, you can appeal that as well. Charity financial assistance, I already talked about that. Negotiating, so just directly to the hospital, call them, I got this bill, it's this amount, I don't have insurance, or I do have insurance, but it's only covering this much. Can I pay this much instead? If I'm paying cash, can that change the amount? If there are any errors in the bill, so maybe something is coded wrong, they didn't give you morphine or something else that's on the bill, so asking for an itemized bill, just asking sometimes will remove something. On student loans, ideally you would work with the federal student loans. Now the con is the government's gonna have more powers to collect from you than a private lender, but they have better options here. So federal loans, interest rate is fixed, you know exactly what it's going to be, and they announce what it will be every July. Actually, they announce it in June to take effect in July. So you'll know what it's going to be. Each one of your student loans that you get over time is a separate loan. We can consolidate all of those and put them into one to simplify things for a client. And depending on what different types you have, that's gonna be a path to applying for one of those forgiveness options. Possibly subsidized. Subsidized means that the government is paying your interest while you are a student. So we have subsidized and unsubsidized student loans from the government. The unsubsidized are going to be accruing interest, but you're not having to make any payments while you're a student. And we have a 6-month grace period after graduation, or after you're no longer a student. I guess you could drop out after a couple years. With the private loans, there's not gonna be subsidized options. You may have to pay immediately. So as soon as you get it, the next month you have a payment due on that loan. So you could be paying while you're a student, before you've gotten a job. They're not going to offer any sorts of forgiveness. We'll go into the different types of forgiveness that government loans do have. What else? And the payment plans. So with the government loans, there's 3 main types of repayment. The standard, I'm just going to do it visually, it's gonna be the same amount every month. After my 6-month grace period, I'm paying these every month. I can get a timeout through going back to school, deferment, or letting them know I'm broke, forbearance. So standard repayment, I'm paying the same amount for the entire time for 10 years. We could have that extended, 25 or 20 years. With the second way we do this, the income-based repayment plans, you have to be on an income-based repayment plan in order to get public service loan forgiveness. Public service loan forgiveness, we see over here, you have to have 120 minimum payments, so 10 years minimum, and you also have to certify that you're working for a qualified employer. That employer could be a charity, a 501c3, it could be government, it could be tribal. Any of those, you certify. We saw how we could search for an employer on the website, and yeah, I think that was the big one. We looked at teacher forgiveness, so if you teach STEM in an area that has high need for that, there may be a separate one, but keep in mind we can't do both. We can't both get our years of service as a teacher in that rural area while we're paying our income-based loan, trying to get public service forgiveness. It's one or the other. So picking what's most advantageous for your client might depend on the amount of debt they have. And then our third way was the graduated repayment. So standard is the same payment every month. Graduated, it's going up every year. It'll start out lower. The idea being when you first start working, you're earning less, and then as you earn more, you'd be able to easily pay more. Income-based actually looks at your income to change those payments. Verified each year with your tax return. Other ways we can get forgiveness. There was a disability, and that one you definitely don't want to recommend, death. So the student loan will die with you. This is also why you don't want to combine your student loans with your spouse. So it is something that's allowed, but if you get hit by a bus, your spouse now owes your student loan debt because they basically took it on. It's like they're a co-signer on it. Other ways that we can potentially get our loans forgiven, we went to a school that was a fraud. It wasn't actually accredited. Maybe they miscommunicated or fraudulently communicated their graduation rates, job placement rates, things like that, expectations from you. Maybe there was identity theft, you didn't even take on that loan. And some other smaller ones there. Big one is going to be the public service loan forgiveness, where you certify that you worked for that qualifying employer while you were making those prepayments. What type of plan do we have to be on? What type of prepayment plan? Yep, one of the income-based ones. So, private companies, those private lenders, they don't have all the powers the government does to collect. That's the con of the government loan. They can start taking your money, they can go into your bank account. They can get these dollars from you. Other ways we can pay, hopefully grants, scholarships. Keep telling y'all, be sure you apply. We often have more scholarships than people applying for them, so they don't all get awarded. And then jobs. Okay, I mentioned those timeouts, deferment. You went back to school, so a great way for a client, maybe they got pregnant while they were a college student, ended up having to drop out, raise the child, and 10 years later are divorced. So now, what can we do? Maybe go back to school. This gives me the ability to take on additional student loans. While I'm in school, I get a timeout on those payments, and I can use the additional loans that I got to keep a roof over my head while I'm investing in myself to hopefully increase my earning power. Forgiveness we already talked about, and then those different paths to getting dollars applied towards it or taken out. Repossessions. So your car is collateral for the car payment. If you took a loan from a bank, if you got financing through the dealer, if you miss a single payment, they have the right to take your car. They can break into your car, so they can break a window. Maybe they kept a key, so they're able to get in without breaking the window. Maybe they have to track you down or hunt you down and try to find a time where your car is not parked in your garage or on private property because they can't reach the piece. So they're able to do this. They don't even have to go to court. It's part of the contract. You didn't pay, we get to take the car. And I talked about how some car dealerships, this is kind of their business model. They sell the same car 30 times, each time repossessing it when somebody doesn't make full payment, and then selling it again to somebody else. And those will be the ones that advertise no credit, no problem type situations. So they're going to charge a high interest rate, and then when you miss a payment, they repossess it. Most states, we don't have to send that notice. So we had the eviction notice, we had the foreclosure notice, where it had to be posted on my door, mailed to me, certified mail, and these different rules they had to follow with that procedure. With a car repossession, they don't have to notify you. And in Alabama specifically, you do not have to provide that notification. They can just tell you, oh, by the way, we repossessed your car after the fact. Some states, they might have to give you the notice, but most states, they can just go take the car. They can't take it if it's because you owe medical debt, credit card debt. It's specifically tied. It's the secured debt on the car itself. Not breaching the peace, I already mentioned that. They can't break into your locked garage or just go into your garage. That might vary by state. They can't threaten you. They can't physically assault you. So if you just sit in the car and say, no, you can't take it, they wouldn't be able to do that. The location of your car matters. There's the locked garage. There's also maybe you have an employer that provides parking and it's their private structure. They can't reach the piece there. They can't break in there, but they could take it while you're at the grocery store. They may have a GPS tracker on it so that they know where the car is and it's easier for them to find you. The more work they put into it, the more it's gonna cost you, because they are going to charge you for that additional effort it took for them to repossess the car from you. Special protections for active military, we've seen special things for military with evictions as well, and interest rates. So to help your client not have their car repossessed, obviously make the monthly payment. But if we're falling behind, maybe reaching out to the creditor and saying, hey, this is my situation, I could pay this much, or maybe we change the loan terms, do something else where I've got a lower monthly payment, but extend it, change the interest rate, something where they can keep the car. If we do that, we wanna make sure we get it in writing, whatever the agreement is, so that they don't later repossess it and say, hey, that agreement never existed. So it'll just be your word against theirs. Keeping insurance current, they're probably going to require that you have comprehensive insurance, because that's their collateral. Once you pay off the car, well, they can't repossess it, but you could also drop your insurance to liability only, as opposed to comprehensive. Some of those states allow you to cure the default before they repossess it. Those are the ones that have to give you notice, hey, we're gonna repossess it, here's how much you owe. Alabama, again, is not one of those. They'll just take your car, or they can just take your car and then after the fact say, we took your car. Another option, instead of getting it repossessed, is sell it yourself and then paying off the lender with whatever you make from it. Talk about those things they can and can't do. Just filing for bankruptcy, we get a little bit of a timeout for a while. Whether the court approves it or not will be a different matter. We will look at those two types of bankruptcy a little later. Minimizing loss of property in the car. Don't keep your valuables in there. If you think it might be repossessed, you don't want to come out of the grocery store with your groceries and find out that, oh, your car's been repossessed, and you're also out of your laptop and whatever other things are in there. And maybe things that are going to cause you issues with exams or work. If they did take it, we want to send them in writing, here's all the stuff that was in the car, I need that back. So they don't have the right to keep your other stuff, it's only the collateral, the car that was the collateral for the debt. We can potentially reinstate the contract by doing what's called that cure. Here's the amount that was left. Potentially negotiating with somebody who repossessed it, but at this point, if they've already repoed it, they probably didn't want to negotiate with you, but you can try. After they take it, so they may charge you for storage fees, they're gonna charge you for the effort it took them to repossess the car. So the easier made it, if you had just taken it to them like, okay, I'm behind, I tried to negotiate with you, can't do it, here's the car. So drive it to the dealership, take out all your stuff, here's the car. Now they don't have that additional cost of towing it and finding you. If the car sells for less than they owe, so they will auction it off or sell it however they're gonna sell it. If it's less than what you owe, you still owe dollars. If there's a surplus, they owe you money. Most likely it's going to sell for less than, well, I guess it depends where you are on the payments. If they don't get the full amount that you owe, you still owe that. So they'll reduce the total, you owe $10,000, they sold it for $8,000, you still owe $2,000. But now instead of being more of a priority debt because it had collateral, it's just your promise to pay. It's gonna hurt your credit's already been hurt. So focus on staying alive. Housing, food. Defenses to that deficiency. They sold you a bad car. They fraudulently said something about the car that wasn't true. It runs better than it does. It has something in it. The credit terms were not clear. They interpreted it in a different way. They charged you too high of an interest rate. Something else. Potentially routinely accepted late payments as a defense, but you still would have had to make that additional payment. If they breach the peace, You may be able to sue them for that, but that doesn't change the fact that you still owe them. Maybe you owed less than what they say, so they miscalculated, they threw on some extra fees that shouldn't have been there. They potentially sold this car that Kelley Blue Book said should be worth $8,000 for $4,000. So then they maybe sold it to their friend and they're pocketing the difference somehow. Other debt collectors, they have rules that they must follow. So just because a debt collector is calling you doesn't mean you actually have to pay the debt, at least not right now. Stay alive, keep the housing and food situation good. With our prioritizing of debts, you choose the ones that are going to be most needed right now. Letting them guilt you into something if you're gonna starve, don't wanna starve. Bankruptcy, we may be able to keep some things that might be protected. Depending on your state, different things would be protected. How can collectors collect? They're probably first going to report it to the FICO, which is going to take it on to Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion. So it'll show up on your credit report. That's going to impact your credit score, making it harder for you to borrow. But that's okay. We can rebuild it later. Let them report that, and we'll figure it out later. They can potentially turn an unsecured debt into a secured debt if they go to court and the judge agrees to make this credit card debt secured to something. That's going to be a tough battle because you'll have other debts, other things going on. Most likely the court is just going to say, yep, they owe you this money. And then they can also just stop doing business with you. They're no longer going to let you shop in their store or whatever it might be. We have rules that the debt collectors must follow. Fair Debt Collection Practices Act lays those out. Note here that we can sue the collector, but we're only going to get $1,000 plus court costs. Emotional harm is really hard to show. If there is financial, physical harm, that they broke my leg, I've got the hospital bill, show them they did that, they're probably not going to break legs. First step is they have to let you know that you owe the debt. So probably going to send you a certified letter saying you owe this money, here's the exact amount, here's where it came from. We bought it from your dentist and now we own it. If you respond to that with a certified letter saying, yep, I received it, I'll work at something out, they have to stop contacting you. No these phone calls, no other things going on. Fair Debt Collection Practices Act requires that they keep this confidential. They're only communicating it to you, the person that owes the money. So debt collectors have bought this debt for less than is owed. If you're more likely to pay, maybe they paid 80-90% of what is owed to Visa or to the dentist, to whoever you owe those dollars. And then they'll try to collect the full amount from you. So they may be willing to negotiate on how much you actually pay them. The less likely they think they are going to be able to collect from you, the less they're going to be willing to pay for that debt. So no communication to third parties, meaning they can't tell your friends, they can't tell your coworkers, they can't tell your family. It's just you that they're communicating with. Reasonable hours, so they can't call you at 3 in the morning and basically harass you. Exception would be if you work night shift, and that would be normal time for them to contact you. They can only contact you directly with cell phones. They may not know that you're at work at your friend's house, at the hospital. They're not supposed to contact you in those places. Once you let them know that you're represented by a lawyer, all communication would have to go through the lawyer rather than you, so they couldn't contact you at all after that. Obscene words, racial slurs, insulting remarks, threatening, intimidating, abusive language. They can't do any of that. They can't threaten to have Child Protective Services take your child away because you're an unfit parent because you owe these dollars. Whatever threats they make, they have no right to do any of those things. So they're not able to take your child away, they're not able to arrest you, they're not able to keep you from getting your Social Security disability checks. False or misleading misrepresentation. So they put on an attorney's letterhead, you owe this money and we're gonna take you to court. If the attorney didn't actually send that, then that would be both misleading and false. Maybe the debt isn't yours, maybe it's no longer collectible. So maybe so much time has passed, this is no longer a collectible debt. Maybe it's not you. Extra fees not expressly authorized by law, and those would vary by state, by jurisdiction. Post-dated checks prior to the date. Remember how we talked about how banks are mean? If you have a paycheck coming in on November 11th and a check that you wrote or a bill that you wrote, something going out on the same day, first they're going to take dollars out before they put dollars in, because banks will potentially be able to collect an overdraft fee on you. So writing a post-dated check, the debt collector may say, hey, I understand that you can't pay now because you don't get paid until Friday. How about you write me a post-dated check for whatever that date is, and I promise I won't deposit it until then. If they deposit it early, you're in trouble. And the bank would just breezily run it through their system, and it's gonna cause issues. You could maybe argue it later, like, hey, this wasn't dated, you shouldn't have put it through. Better to only give them money if you can't afford to pay it and you prioritize all your other stuffs, and we've tried to negotiate with them. Now, checking for any errors on the posting. It wasn't you. I gave my example of I received one for somebody who was Richard Stebbins, but not me, Richard Stebbins. Somebody else with a different middle name that had some debt. We can send a complaint letter to them saying, hey, you've been harassing me, stop harassing me. And then we have some resources for help. Federal Trade Commission, State Attorney General's Office, and Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. And I would recommend the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau first. Their goal is specifically to help people with these different types of issues. We can potentially declare bankruptcy, and this would definitely be lower on the priority list for a court. And potentially sue the debt collector, but remember, they're not going to be responsible for a whole lot, unless they've assaulted you. Ideally, once we realize that it's going to be an issue, we've contacted the creditor, not the debt collector, but we reached out to the dentist. Hey, I understand I've got this bill, here's my situation, can I pay you over time? Can I pay a reduced amount, something? Because they might prefer that, plus keeping you as a patient, rather than selling it off to a debt collector. If it has gone to the debt collectors, I mentioned that cease letter. Once you say, hey, I've received it, stop contacting me, being sure to send it certified mail. Getting a lawyer and possibly paying a little less than it's owed or some sort of payment plan. If we sue, we're not getting much. You want to document all the harassment that they did. So they called you at 3 a.m., write that down. They called me at this time, here's what they said. They called me names, they threatened to make me lose my welfare, my SNAP, my chip, my something. All right, bankruptcy. The idea behind bankruptcy is we are starting over. We got in too deep, maybe there's medical debt, maybe there's other things, and we want to go forward with a clean slate. There's this idea of, I've washed all those debts off, they're gone, those people can no longer come after me. With that filing, we get an automatic stay on a lot of stuff. So I can't be kicked out of my house if I filed in time, and we want to strategically file. If you're going to file bankruptcy, think about what's going to disappear. This credit card debt's going to disappear, so I can buy some food. I can, if I need a surgery, get that done now, where afterwards it's going to fall away. Potentially, we are going to set up a repayment plan or go, I can't pay anything. Disadvantages, the court's gonna say, okay, put down all your assets in, basically this imaginary bucket. So they're gonna check and see what I have, what things are owed, and figure out how to divvy that up if I am declaring either type. If I'm going 13, we're setting up that payment plan. Now it's gonna impact my credit rating, and we had our two types that our credit report will show those for 7 or 10 years. So chapter 13, where I am making the repayment plan, it's gonna disappear after 7 years, because awesome, I did a better job there. With chapter 7, it's gonna stay on my credit report for 10 years. And anybody who pulls up my credit report, one of those authorized people that has access for, I'm trying to borrow money from them, they are going to see that 9 years ago, I declared chapter 7 bankruptcy. So it's gonna impact my credit rating, and I can improve that over time. So even if it was there 10 years ago, or 8 years ago, if I've been responsible for the last 5 years, that's gonna show up on my credit report as well. The more obligation I borrowed, I should pay it back, and then potentially discrimination where I'm not going to lend you money because you declared bankruptcy. Even though you did all these things to improve your credit over the past 5 years, and the score is good, it's showing up as you're responsible. I see that you declared bankruptcy 8 years ago. Maybe I don't want to lend you money, and maybe I don't want to hire you. So we looked at the CFP board and their rules on if you declared bankruptcy. That's just for the marks, just using the CFP designation. For somebody who might potentially hire you, they might think, well, why would I trust you to manage my client's money if you can't manage your own money? Talked about the automatic stay already. The fresh start is the idea that you are moving forward from all this debt. Now you don't have to worry about all these bills coming at you, and you can start over. The court is going to determine where these things go. That automatic stay, here's a timeout while I, the judge, the court, figure out how to manage these assets, how to pay which creditors how much. Avoiding preferential transfers to creditors. Here's that automatic stay. Nobody's getting paid anything while we're in the automatic stay. The court's going to decide how those payments are going to be made. Distributed out between everybody. So chapter 7, once I file, I've got that automatic stay, give all my assets and liabilities to the court, and this is the same, exactly the same for chapter 13. I'll file the petition with the court, get the automatic stay, and then I disclose all my stuff with the court, assets and liabilities, and then if I'm chapter 13, make a plan. If it's chapter 7, they're going to pay out what they can from the assets that are non-exempt, and then we walk away free and clear from all that debt. Notice that, like child support, we would still have to continue paying. Chapter 13, now we're putting together a plan, 3 to 5 years of payments from income in the future, and this is going to be set up by the court. Here's how much I think you can pay over the next 3 to 5 years, and here's this trustee. You pay the trustee $1,218.57 every month, and at the end of the 3 to 5 years, they're gonna dole out those dollars to the different creditors you owed according to this system set by the court, but you're not giving anything to those creditors directly. You're going all to the trustee, and then the trustee is figuring out how to pay all those out. You're doing your best over that 3 to 5 years, and the trustee is gonna verify that. The court's gonna be overseeing it, making sure that you are, maybe this month you were only able to pay 1,000 or 800 because whatever situation happened, but you're trying. And if you should suddenly get a windfall, a better job, or whatever, it doesn't raise the amount that you're paying into this sort of bucket that the trustee is using to pay. This plan was already set based on where you were when you filed and what you, the court, everybody thought your future earnings would be. Potentially, I can keep my house, it was in foreclosure, I was this far behind, maybe I can get back on track with those. So cure arrearages, I get to pay the past 4 months that I missed, or however long it was, along with any fees owed. And when that 3 to 5 years ends, the rest is discharged, even if I haven't paid 100%. And the plan is probably not going to be pay 100% of what is owed, it's gonna be pay 70% of what is owed. And then I try my best, but I only get to 60, cool, it's still all discharged. We saw there's our bucket, all our stuff goes in there, court looks at it, figures out what's exempt, gives that back to you, and then everything else they use to pay off the creditors as much as possible then. And then for chapter 13, we are continuing on with the payment plan. Chapter 7, we're done at this point. There's nothing else that we're paying. All those remaining things have been discharged. Questions so far? All right, so our property taxes pay for all the nice things, the roads we drive on, the sewers, the fire station that is going to come put out your house when it's on fire, education, and that's gonna kind of depend. So where I grew up in Amarillo, property taxes went to pay for the education of the high school, junior high, elementary school system close to your neighborhood. So it was based on where you were, and those dollars would go there. Remember we talked about how property tax is based on the assessed value of your property. So nicer neighborhoods would pay higher property taxes, which would make for nicer schools. Tascosa had a pool, we didn't have a pool. Fancy stuffs. So all these different things that property taxes go towards paying, they have a person or office where their job is specifically to assess the value of all the homes in their jurisdiction. So you could potentially appeal what they thought it was. If you think they assessed it too high, you can appeal and say, hey, you are basing it off of the last property that sold 3 months ago. The market has drastically changed, and that house had a pool and had all these other things. It was 3 stories high. All the other houses in this neighborhood are much smaller, don't have pools, and you can justify why it should be lower. So depending on where you're at, each jurisdiction is going to have their own rules. You might be able to file this appeal online, justifying it with, here's what things sold for, here's my reasoning behind it. It should be lower, making my property tax lower, because the property tax is a percentage of the assessed value. So maybe we're doing it online, maybe we have to go in person to make that argument. Government has lots of powers, so I want to communicate sooner rather than later if I'm behind on property taxes. Remember we had that escrow account that our mortgage lender set up for us. So when I made my monthly mortgage payment, part of it went into an escrow account to pay the property taxes, a bill that comes due once, maybe twice a year. With the house paid off, so I went through, let's say, my 15-year repayment plan, bank is happy, they're no longer putting together that escrow account for me. Now I've got to set aside the dollars myself. So it could be that surprise bill that your clients have, I didn't realize I had to do this. We can reach out to our jurisdiction and say, hey, instead of paying all at once, I didn't realize this was a thing, it's my first time, I fell behind for whatever reason, can I get a payment plan for it? Or maybe instead of paying 100% of it, I pay 80% of it. So maybe we can negotiate somehow. And for the most part, just like the bank, they don't really want to take our house. But if you don't pay property taxes, they could take your house. If we do have a lender, which they should have set up an escrow account anyway, it should have been part of what they did with the mortgage. They might help us with the property taxes by, okay, here's a small loan, pay the property taxes because I don't want to be behind the government in taking back this collateral. The house is my collateral. If the government takes it, it's going to be tougher for me. Potentially declaring bankruptcy, and if you are In the military, we have special protections again, just like we've seen before. So similar to the mortgage lender, the government takes your house, they sell it, there could be a surplus, there could be a deficit. Likely there will be a surplus because the property tax is not that high. I can potentially buy my own house. At that auction, maybe I'm able to get it for cheaper or whatever the situation might be. And keeping in mind that the excess of the tax bill would come back to me. So if I do have the money, somehow I won the lottery, I got some sort of windfall, I want to bid on the house, and if I bid extra, cool, it's mostly coming back to me anyway. So it's an auction that I can win if I've got the dollars. I can be willing to pay more than most other buyers would want to because I can overpay. We can potentially go to court, but unless there was some sort of issue with what the government did, we're gonna lose that battle. We owed the property taxes. So all these different things here where we can potentially win, they sent it to the wrong person, they somehow fraudulently threw on some fees, did some things that they couldn't do. But this is very rare that there's going to be any of those issues. Contesting it, go to court just like we did with the eviction, just like we did with the debt collector. Otherwise, there's a default judgment entered against us. The court just takes the side of the creditor, the whoever it is. I can potentially file a lawsuit myself, and I can take advantage of tax clinics, civil law clinics in law schools if there's one nearby. And we saw earlier on the semester the website that listed all the different law clinics that the University of Alabama Law School had. After the tax sale is complete, you didn't get it, somebody else has bought your house, I may still have the right to redeem and say, see ya, wouldn't want to be it to the person that's now in my house. So I could kick them out if my jurisdiction allows this. And I made the redemption, I would also have to compensate that person that I'm kicking out for any improvements that they did on the property. And maybe I can buy it directly from them without having to go through this process. Federal income taxes. We had our failure to file and failure to pay penalties. So even if you can't pay, file. Just, okay, yep, here's the taxes, here's what I owe, I don't have the money. But now I don't have that failure to file penalty going against me over the next however many months it takes me to file. We can just file for our automatic extension. So instead of paying taxes in April, October. Ways we can pay the tax debt. The government, again, has different setups for us to just automatically say, hey, I want to file a payment plan. So there's the form that we saw on the IRS website. We can potentially negotiate for less than is owed. That currently non-collectible status isn't going to mean that we no longer owe the debt. It just means that we're getting a timeout, just like forbearance in student loans. With that installment agreement, there is a maximum amount of time that payment plan can be. So maximum 72 months, and it's only for owing $50,000 or less. And those numbers haven't been changed in years. If we're able to pay, great, we don't have to pay these penalties. With the credit card, that's a great way to pay taxes because I'm getting points on it. I'm getting interest earned on the dollars I didn't have, if I'm doing that responsibly. If not, well, at least the government isn't going to collect from me. They have all those powers. I put it on the credit card, and maybe later I declare bankruptcy. The government is still going to get their dollars if I'm the one, or if they're the ones that I owe. So I don't pay. I didn't take advantage of that 72-month payment plan. Instead, I do my best somewhere else. So what can the government do? They can take my stuff. They can go into my bank account seize dollars, they can take whatever stuff I have. Government has lots of powers. Now, we saw garnishment of wages for child support as well, where we had to file in the state where the non-paying ex-spouse lived. So government's first gonna be nice. IRS will send you a letter, hey, you owe us some money, be great if you paid us, and they'll send a few of those. You'll get these certified letters saying, hey, you gotta pay, you gotta pay, you gotta pay, and then they'll start being mean, and then they'll start taking your stuff if you're just continuing to not respond or not pay. We can get ourselves a little bit of a timeout just by filing for this request a review to make sure it's correct. We get everything stopped while that happens. Potentially bankruptcy, but Chapter 13 is the one that is going to work. And unlike when we looked at Chapter 13 earlier, we were figuring out, well, how about 80% total of what I owe to all these different creditors? The tax is gonna be 100%. So we're gonna have differences in how those people are paid. And here I gotta pay the full amount over the 3 to 5 years, where with the other creditors, the plan was to pay 80%. I was only able to do 70%, but I tried my best. That's still discharged. With the tax debt, I gotta pay 100% of that. We can potentially negotiate that reduced amount and get our time out by saying I am broke. And it's just filing paperwork. They've got forms. They've got it all set up for you to take advantage of. All right, what other topics? Let's start at the beginning. Yeah.
Will there be mapping too?
Yes, so that same setup we've done before, our time value of money showing the impact of interest rates, where two people buy the same car, one has a better credit score, so they get this percent interest rate, and the other person gets a different percentage interest rate. You'll calculate the total cost of the car, and then also take that to how much total interest did each person pay.
Can we do a practice run?
Sure. I have a calculator on my phone, so I will need your help. So I would want you to set this up just like we did. Does the camera see the? Okay, good. So show your work, write this out. You're gonna do it for both people. The only thing that's gonna change is the interest rate. We'll say this is Billy and this is Susie. In for a car is typically gonna be over 5 years, monthly. So you'd want your calculator to be in 12 periods per year. So 5 times 12 is 60. It'll be 60 for both of them. I would give you the amount of the loan. We'll say 32K. Payment, we would have to calculate. Future value, I wouldn't give you, but what would it be? 0, because we paid it off. And then I would say, this person has great credit, their interest rate is 2%. What about this person with terrible credit? What's their interest rate? Okay, so something higher. So calculate the payment for each, remembering your calculator should be in 12 periods per year, and all I'm changing is payment. So I would do this in my calculator for Billy, calculate his monthly payment.
So would it be 60 times 12 for in?
No, 60 would be in. 5 times 12, so 5 years times 12 months equals 60. And if I have it in 12 periods per year, I can put 5 shift XPY.
Okay, so N would originally be 5. You were like doing second N, like if you're doing 5 and second N.
Yeah, or I just did it in my head, or put 5 times 12, but either way, N should say 60. N equals 60 in your calculator.
$560.89.
560.89. So now I would multiply this times the total number of payments. So 560.89 times 60 payments equals,
$33,653.30.
so we paid an extra, if it was 32,000, 32, subtract that, 1,653.30 in interest, total payment year. So now switch IY to 12 and compute payment for Susie.
Seven.
I don't know if I'm wrong, but for my payment, I got 920.
Anybody else get that?
I got 533.
533, okay.
I got 560 point.
Let me,
Here.
alright, so we got different answers, let's see what, just joking, alright.
Is your period like 12?
Yeah.
12 periods per year,
And 12.
yeah, so end or begin mode. So we've got our correct number of years, periods per year at 12, 60 in, 2 IY, 32,000 present value. I'm gonna put a 0 in the future value just because I'm paranoid. And compute payment, 560.88, 88883. And what did you get?
I got.
Let's see. Okay, you're in 12 periods per year. You're in end mode. 60 in, 2 IY, 32 present value, and a 0 future value just because I'm paranoid. Compute payment. I don't know, something must have been entered in a little bit different. It was really close, 533 versus 560. So you're paying a little bit less. But I don't know where you went wrong though. Is everybody able to get the 560?
Wait, so just for clarification, like, do you type in 60 as N, and then just like feed the 12 periods per year, like,
Yes.
in there? Okay.
Yeah, so the 12 periods per year are going to impact our IY. Whatever our periods per year does, it divides IY by that number.
Okay.
But you still have to do the multiplication for N. You could do the second XPYR, so if you already have it in here.
You can put your N in and then put second N, and it'll compute it for you.
Yeah.
Wait, did it do it again?
You say
I'm confused.
5, shift, and then see how we go to the XPY for N. It'll do that calculation for you. And you press N, we always want to see equals, N equals 60.
Do not put the percent.
No, I just put 2.
Okay. If you do the interest, oh, I see what you're saying.
No, not the whole time, just I think I forgot it.
There was some problem with it that was.
So. Divided by 12. Yeah. Yes.
This is kind of a dumb question, but for beginning mode, you press second and then wait,
Second set, I guess.
okay, thank you.
And you'll see that on your screen. So you'll always know what mode you're in, but you don't know how many periods per year you have. You have to manually check that. And you can do that with the second PY. And you'll see whatever you're set at right now. For this one, If you want, you can set your calculators on 12 periods per year right now, and I can go around and make sure you've got that. Because that's all you'll do on this exam. You want to change it to anything else. Investments would be something different. All right, good on the calculation. So let's do it for Susie at 12%. What is Susie's payment?
$711.82.
Thank you, Liva. And then what do we do with that?
Multiply it by 60, and it comes out to $42,709.34.
And we paid $32,000 for it. So we have 10,709, 34 that we paid in interest, 42,700 total that we paid for the car. Everybody else get 711 there? Okay, so that's what I would want from you. Calculate it, you'll see the impact interest rate has on the same loan. We had a higher monthly payment, it's expensive to be poor, and we paid $10,709 for it. I might even have you do one more. Subtract what Billy paid to get the difference. How much more did they pay in interest because of their poor credit? Or some of our strategies for improving credit score, repairing it.
Small and closed loans.
Small and closed loans. What else?
Secured credit card.
Small closed in. Yeah, secured credit card where we give them the deposit. Here's $200, and for the next 12, 18 months, I will be responsible to pay it. I have a credit limit of the $200, so a credit card company has zero risk. They know they've got the dollars, and after a while, I show them I'm responsible. They'll give me back my $200, and it becomes a regular credit card. What else? There's two ways.
Can you co-signer on a credit card?
Yeah, have somebody become a co-signer on a credit card on a debt where they're just as responsible. Or I could be an authorized user on a credit card where I'm not responsible at all.
Are we gonna have an article for the counseling exam?
No, that's in investments.
Okay. I think they had it last night, it caught me off guard, cause I didn't know, you like uploaded it?
Oh yeah, so I gave you a specific one for that.
Okay.
For this one, you don't have an article to read,
Okay.
it's this setup. Or 10 multiple choice, 10 short answer. Alright, want me to just go into credit? More math? Up to you. 15 minutes left. Is there a specific topic you want me to skip to instead of credit?
Is the core problem only math?
Yes.
Okay.
So everybody was getting here's the 5 elements of FICO, that was really your only other math. You won't have that question on this exam, because everybody's getting it. Alright, so starting with credit, buy now, pay later. I am getting something now, but I don't have to pay for it until a later date. And I'm paying interest for that. So awesome, I had this emergency, my car broke down, I'm able to repair it with my credit card. I'm able to have that protection that a credit card gives me. If I lose my credit card or it's stolen, I just contact the credit card company and say, hey, my card was stolen, so don't charge me for that. Bank will say, cool, we won't charge you, or Visa will say, cool, we won't charge you for the expenses incurred after it was stolen, and we'll send you a new card. When I'm making purchases, I am getting rewards. I'm getting a percentage off, I'm building up travel miles, something. I may have a card that I pay for, so I pay an annual fee, or a card that I don't pay a fee for. Disadvantage is I'm charged a high rate of interest on this. Because it's not a secured debt, it's just my promise to pay, they charge a higher interest rate than like a home loan would, than a car loan would, where there's some sort of collateral for them to take. I don't have to pay the entire amount off every month. There will be a minimum amount that will keep me in good standing with them. I'm not falling behind. I made the minimum payment. Cool, but that now means that my $20 t-shirt, by the time I pay this off, is going to be $100. And makes it easy to just, cool, I'll buy another whatever, as opposed to if you just had cash in your pocket. People tend to, well, I'm out of cash, so I can't buy anything else. If we're using it responsibly, they're awesome though. If I'm not paying them off, I'm gonna pay more. I'll pay this higher interest rate like we saw with the car. People will just not be willing to lend me money or just smaller amounts. You all pulled up your own credit report. You can do that for clients. You can help them get it through one of our 3 agencies, Experian, TransUnion, Equifax, and help them go through it to see if there's any issues. We can figure out where they're behind, how much they owe different places. And if there's any errors, we can dispute them. So specific information on the credit report, they knew what type of credit it was. Was this a credit card debt, home loan, car loan, student loan, how much that amount is, or if it's a credit card, what, in addition, if it's a credit card, here's the balance I owe, and then here is the limit I can spend. So if I'm considering lending you money and I see you have 3 credit cards with a $20,000 limit, you could go into debt $60,000 tomorrow. The more credit cards you have, the more potentially you could go. But I'm also looking at, well, you're regularly paying it off. You're in this, we saw that 1 to 30% credit ratio where you were using it responsibly. The date that you didn't pay or the date of that balance that was reported, and am I making those payments? Not in there, they don't know what I'm buying, so my buying habits are not in the credit report, just that I owe this much to Visa. They don't know my race, they don't know my gender, religion, nationality. They could maybe guess some of that based on my name. They don't know if I have been to prison. They don't know if I am currently going through the court system for whatever. They have no idea what criminal background is for me. FICO is collecting all this information and they are sharing it with Equifax, Experian, TransUnion. Those are the places we get the credit reports. Those are the places that banks are going to go to get information on you to decide whether or not to lend to you. The information there is used to create a credit score, but there's not actually a credit score on there. Our credit scores, we're looking at sort of this major one, and as we mentioned in class, there are different types of scores, maybe specific to car buying or landlord-tenant. And we saw the range of scores, 850. We would be exceptional, really 800 plus exceptional. And the lower our score, the higher the interest rate we're going to be charged. We have those different factors, and y'all are nailing that, so you won't see this on the exam this time. We just talked about our strategies to rebuild credit, so you have all of those. There's the credit utilization ratio I mentioned with the 1 to 30% that a lender would like to see. Like, okay, you're using it, it's not just sitting in your freezer. We've talked about prioritizing debts. You want to stay alive first, so keep a roof over your head and food on your plate. With that prioritization, you may not be paying everybody. So maybe you're making just the minimum payment on your credit card while you keep something else together. Or maybe you don't pay the credit card at all and let that impact your credit report, your credit score. That's fine, we can rebuild it later. Secured debt and unsecured debt. Secured, they have something they can take. Unsecured is just my promise to pay. Unsecured could become secured if they go through the court system. And then it would raise up in priority. Talk about the prioritization of stay alive and how they can become higher priority. Credit scores already been impacted. If debt collectors are coming after you, it's already been sent to the Experian, Equifax, TransUnion. They already have that you fell behind, that you defaulted on this, whatever. It's already impacted your credit score. It's going to continue to worsen as you don't pay, but that's fine. We can repair it later. Threats to sue. versus actually being sued. The debt collector may say, hey, I'm gonna take you to court and force you to pay this, to attach some sort of collateral to this promise to pay. If it's a small amount that you owe, it may not be worth the hassle to them, so they may just be trying to get you to pay. That's their job, is to get you to pay the debt. Dealing with obligation distress, remember you don't owe grandma's debt. You inherited, they had the chance to make their claim against the estate. If they didn't do so, or the court decided, hey, you have no proof that she owed you money, or whatever the situation was, it's a speak now or forever hold your peace kind of situation. You don't owe somebody else's debt. If you pay a single dollar towards it, you have assumed responsibility for it. I'm thinking long term, maybe I'm skipping some credit card payments, maybe I'm skipping some other type of payment so that I can keep the roof over my head. Maybe I'm going to set up that installment plan with the hospital, with the whoever, to reduce the amount that I have to pay right now. And maybe I'm negotiating that amount to be lower along with the installment plan. Refinancing, we saw our calculation with the homes where 15 years versus 30 years, at 30-year payment is going to be lower monthly, greater in total cost. But maybe I want to refinance even though it's not super favorable to my rate. Maybe I want to refinance anyway because it'll get me a lower monthly amount. I can keep the roof over my head. And maybe if my condition changes in a few years, I'll be able to accelerate those payments by paying more than that monthly amount. We had our different scams. Payday loans were a big one that we talked about, along with those rent-to-own companies. Bankruptcy, we get the timeout and talk about strategically timing this to after I bought all those canned goods and had my surgery. With bankruptcy, I'm still gonna have to do things. So we saw our tax debt doesn't disappear. We had our two different types, 7 or 13, where I'm either saying 7, I'm out, 13, here's a repayment plan. And just filing gives us the timeout. Different ways we can get help. With the eviction, that was one of those documents you wanted to have from the client. We want to see the lease itself to see what there is there. And we had the requirement that we received in writing. Here's your eviction notice. Here are the amounts you owe. Here's what you can do to cure the notice and be back on good terms with us. So potentially I'm gonna reach out to the landlord before I even get the eviction notice to negotiate, maybe even afterwards, because they don't wanna go through the process of eviction anyway. Depending on the lease, maybe I'm able to sublease this unit to somebody else or bring in a roommate, something to help out with the rent. If there is an eviction hearing, I get a default judgment against me if I don't show up. So I wanna show up and maybe I have a defense to it. So they didn't file the notice in time. It's the wrong address, the amount is wrong, whatever is on there, I've got some sort of procedural. Or going into, I've been paying on the 15th of the month, every month I've been here. And so my neighbors, and now all of a sudden you're enforcing this, it's due on the 1st. So if they've been accepting rent late, they can't use that as, well, he paid rent late, so we're evicting him. I've been paying rent on the 15th for the last 4 months, 5 months, whatever it is. Substandard living conditions, there's no running water, there's a leak in the roof, the heat is out, all these different things that the landlord is supposed to be taking care of. The retaliatory eviction, where they just don't like me for some reason. I turn them down for a date, I have loud parties that are technically legal, but they don't like it. Or they just don't like me for whatever reason. So, and going to break a lease, so this is just, I'm renting, I don't have an eviction notice, but I need to break the lease for some reason, I'm moving somewhere else, maybe I'm trying to find a place that has a lower monthly rent, whatever it might be, I wanna look at the lease and see what my options are. So maybe the penalty for breaking the lease is greater than the remaining 3 months of rent that I would have to pay. In that case, I'll just pay those remaining 3 months. I'm still gonna move out, I take all my stuff, move wherever I wanna move, but if it was cheaper for me to just pay those 3 months, maybe I'd do that, as opposed to a penalty for breaking it. Depending on what the lease says, I might be responsible for finding a new tenant, or the landlord would be. If the landlord is, I wanna make sure that they're actually putting in a good faith effort to find a new tenant. And maybe I would have to bring in a person, that roommate idea, maybe I have to have them approved by the landlord. Maybe I'm gonna be responsible for everything anyway. Cleaning, repairing any damage. So if you put holes in the wall, if you just left a mess, they gotta clean that up, they're gonna charge you for the cleaning. Military deployment. I can't be penalized if I am deployed. It doesn't have to be overseas, it just could be to another state, to whatever location. If the military has given me orders to go somewhere else, I can break my lease without consequence. I would still be responsible for any damages I did, things like that. With the eviction, we had our trial. Foreclosure, same idea, except now instead of renting, it was a house that I took out a loan at, and the home is the collateral. Same sort of setup, and they're less likely to foreclose upon me than something would be to evict me. Eviction, they want to get somebody else in that unit paying. The foreclosure, the bank doesn't really want my house. They would be more likely to negotiate with me. Okay, final 2 minutes. What final questions do you have? Yes.
What topics are not on the slides that we need to be aware of?
I just took out everything from the financial counseling book, so all the communication stuff.
Okay, so there's nothing super important that's not on the slides that we need to know?
Yeah, all the financial counseling stuff is still important to know. But I covered that in the previous recording, so you can check that out. The exam is gonna be heavier on the most recent stuff, but it's still comprehensive. You'll see some of the same questions you've seen before, and new ones on the new material. Anything else? All right, roll tide. Thank you, too.
Thank you. So now.
Everything.
Oh yeah, they're comfortable.
In my office.
Should I